Hi, it's me, Ingrid INFP, and I'm going through the book Autismhandboken by Katarina Sörngård, which is a handbook for late diagnosed autistic people who are adults by a neurotypical. I've gone through a series, so check out the other videos that I've made about this book. This chapter is going to be about relationships and about what they call hanging out with other people. This book is in Swedish. So the social norms that she talks about are Swedish norms. So obviously it's going to be different in other countries where you maybe do talk to strangers, which Swedish people will not do, okay? First she talks about how autistic people do have friends, which is a myth that she wants to have busted. I'm glad that she does that and says that, even though I think that by this point we know as autistic people ourselves. But yeah, she talks about how, you talk about different things depending on who it is. If it's a close friend or if it's a colleague or if it's your boss, it will be different. She does talk a little bit about a way to not get into trouble as to not start any trouble at work. Basically, don't gossip about people. That's not a good thing. Yeah, these are just regular tips for socializing. So then she talks about a family and chosen family, and she talks about professional relationships, which can be a little bit iffy because, and in this case she's talking about like relationships with your doctor or therapist. You have to be careful about how close you get because it can easily get into a kind of weird zone. So I'm not friends with my therapist or my doctor because we need to have a professional working relationship. I'm friends with my supervisor, but she's more of a mentor than a friend. So we have discussions that are very kind of one-sided. But she talks about herself a little bit, but I mostly say like about my life. And she is my mentor. And we last met at a cafe, and I thought that was a good environment to have that discussion because I could sit there and we could talk without it being like inappropriate. Had it been going to a bar or a club, it wouldn't have really felt good. So it's important that it feels good for both sides, that it's a balanced relationship and a relationship that is within a certain kind of role, a certain kind of bounds, And then she talks about partners, romantic partners. Often the autistic partner might be more introverted than an extroverted neurotypical partner, but that might not be the case. But that can lead to some problems if, an extrovert is always trying to drag you out to do all these activities and you would rather stay at home. But that's kind of just a difference of personality, So this is something that we need to talk together and have open communication. Another thing is that neurotypical people often are in more of a need of being physically and emotionally close to their partners, and to have this validation verbally compared or physically, rather than autistic partners that might lean more towards like showing their care in other ways, like maybe helping out with something instead of like saying it out loud. The expression of emotion might be different. But yeah, that's once again very individual. Then she talks about a certain strategy, which I'm not sure how well it works, but it's about if you have a conflict with your partner, to have one act as the sender and the other as the receiver, and then switch roles. So one person starts talking and then the other person just mirrors, and then the other way around. I'm not sure how, it seems like it kind of goes in circles in the example that they give, so I'll go further now. She, once again, is there with the eye contact because it's not natural for autistic people often. And often you have to say certain phrases which, you know, are the neurotypical, socially acceptable way of phrasing things. And, you know, when you're in a conflict, sometimes you need to make an effort, and an effort to make the other person happy. So, you know, I'm here advocating for not masking, but, you know, there are certain situations where you need to just, you know, give in, I guess. But the thing is, you shouldn't always be the one giving in to doing things to make the other person happy. She says you can't show too much affection, and I don't know about that. I mean, I think that you can't love someone too much, but you can't like say that expression of love can be too much, because there is such a thing as like just dumping a lot of overwhelming love on somebody, which makes them uncomfortable. Anyway, then she comes to sex, and it's important with consent, and that goes for anybody who is going to be part of a sexual activity. It's important for you both as both parties need to consent fully, and there's always a possibility of somebody saying stop, and you should respect your partner for if they do that, and anything that's not that is bad and frankly dangerous. So that's important to have that communication. Then she talks a little bit about how sensory sensitivities can affect what you like and what you want from a physical relationship with a partner. For example, something that might feel very soft and nice touch might be ticklish, or you might need extra pressure, or you might want no pressure. That's something that you need to talk with your partner, like what kind of touch do you feel is good. She talks a little bit about being taken advantage of. It is more common for autistic people to be taken advantage of, unfortunately. So you need to be careful, especially the first time that you meet somebody. Meet them in a public place. You know, tell somebody else where you are. I think women in general are told these things to protect ourselves, but I'm saying it once again, and this can apply to people of all genders. I'm wearing my LGBT shirt. Anyway, then she talks about something that's quite interesting, that's limerence. She doesn't use that word because it's Swedish, she says fixation, but it's basically that you are obsessed by another person who is not reciprocating your love. And it can be like you're kind of constructing a dream image of them in your head, and then you can't let go of this person, and you are way too invested, and it could lead to stalking. It can lead to just being way too intense with the other partner. So as if you're the stalker and the person, the other person says, like either says no or takes a step back and distances themselves, that doesn't mean that you should go and seek that person more. It means it's a signal that maybe you should take a step back, and rather than just taking a step back, maybe it's better to just not have contact with this person at all, and think about something else, do other activities so that you can get rid of this crush or limerence or whatever this is from your mind. It takes time. And I have been in this situation as a teenager. I think that maybe I've had a little bit of this kind of thought process as a young adult in my early 20s. I do have to take care about not idealizing people, because that is something that I do, especially as an INFP. But I think I've gotten much better at this, but it is a problem, and that's why I have worked hard on not doing this anymore, and if you yourself are stalked, say no. There's the parrot strategy that I talked about in my last video, and be clear. And if you can't deal with this yourself and you feel like you're in danger, call the police. Then we get about getting new friends, and something that's good is joining a course, which obviously is not great for us with social anxiety, but it is good because everybody is new when you start a new course, and also like a class, like some kind of art class or something, sports class, some new class. You get to meet, everybody's meeting new people, and everybody is talking about the activity that you're doing. So there's a clear conversation starter here. And then she talks about presenting yourself, which is important. Especially, it's better to do it the first time rather than later on, because then it gets more awkward. I had this situation just last week where I had a new doctor at my workplace, and she actually, I saw her, but then I went into the coffee room. So I said hi, and then I went, and I realized, wait, this is a new person. I need to say hi to her correctly. So then I went to her room and I knocked on the door and I said hello, and I presented myself and she presented herself. And then I was awkward. I was like, how do I end this conversation now? So I was like, I'll get back to work. Then I left. So yeah, that's one such thing. Another thing is, if you have trouble with remembering faces, then just say that sometimes you have trouble remembering faces. It can be better to just say it straight up. I have trouble remembering names, so I just say it, and nobody really cares about that. If you say that, they're glad that you said, and it's kind of like a joke, and it kind of lets more air into the social situation. Then she talks about internet friendships, which I'm glad that she's kind of positive about it. She does say that be careful when you're meeting somebody for the first time, once again. And also, if people are mean to you on the internet, like, just cut contact, which I am good at doing now that I have this channel for such a long time. And then she talks about online gaming, can also be that kind of friendship. Here we have one of our example people, Jarmo. He meets his internet friend in London at the pub, and that was fun. I myself have had 2 internet friends actually meet up with me. One of them was my Tumblr friend from 15 years back that I met last summer, and the other one was Sick, who is a loyal follower of this channel, who I also met last summer, and it was good. So it's good. Then we come to meeting other people with autism, which is the best, The Tumblr girl that I talked about, she has autism, and it just is an easier situation. I also suspect that some of my friendships when I was growing up were also with undiagnosed autistic people. Yeah, it just works better, the communication flows better. Then we get into how you develop friendships. You go deeper into a friendship, and a good strategy is to remember what the other person talked about last time that you talked to them. because people like to feel validated and they like to feel listened to. And that's a good way to show that you're listening. However, I'm the sort of person who forgets about these sorts of things. And this happened to me just yesterday, where I forgot. One of my friends had told me before about how he takes himself to work and how he comes back from work. And then I forgot which part of the journey was by bike and which part was by train. And then that a person was like, wait, but we've talked about this. And then I had to explain that I forgot, but it doesn't mean that I like, you know, it wasn't caring, you know. It's just that maybe I didn't really take in that information that first time because I was focused on something else that maybe the person said. So one strategy is what they call the medical journal strategy, which actually fits me quite well because I'm a doctor, so this works for me. But it's basically like writing a file on a person. And it might seem a little bit creepy from the outside, but it's actually a pretty good strategy, I think. Like if you have trouble remembering things about people, if your memory is shit, maybe you need to write things down about the person. So he writes about Jarmo has a friend, Anders. Anders actually plays World of Warcraft, just like Jarmo. And they are colleagues. And they usually eat lunch together and they talk about World of Warcraft. However, Jarmo starts realizing that he doesn't actually know a lot about Jarmo. So he asks him about his family and about his hobbies and about his house and such. He makes sure to not turn it into an interrogation, just like making it casual and just adding a question here and there and not just questions. And then when he comes home, he writes down this in the... I am guessing that he writes this when he comes home and that he's not doing it while he's talking to his friend. But yeah, I don't know. It's not clear here. But anyway, that helps him to remember that Anders was going to go on a ski trip. And so when he meets Anders 2 weeks later, he can ask him about the ski trip. Because that actually leads to a better conversation and then they can deepen their friendship. And then she talks a little bit about taking initiative, and it's important that there's a balance between the two people in the relationship so that it's not always one person taking the initiative. I find that this is quite difficult to get such a balance because a lot of autistic people are often more interested in their friends than the other way around, it seems like. So it seems like we're always the one having to make the first step, which can be difficult in a while, like, you know, and then it's hard to take the initiative. Now, I've done it quite a lot because I've realized that that's the only way I'm going to meet some of my friends, because I have friends that live in France, and so I need to contact them every time that I go to France, so that to make sure that they're there and all that, if we can meet up. But if you live close by, maybe you shouldn't always be the one who's making the contacts all the time. Making the contacts can be like, oh, I'm thinking of going to this like this film on this day. Would you like to come with me, or that kind of thing. Then she talks about RSD, rejection sensitive dysphoria, but she doesn't use that term, but she talks about personalizing and avoiding being, taking things personal and getting upset. So I think that we are quite good at coming with these strategies ourselves of how to deal with this. It's easy that we get into a situation and then we think, oh, they must hate me. So, for example, you go and sit down at the lunch table and suddenly people are leaving. And I think that if we have somewhat of an imagination, maybe we're like, oh, so the first gut reaction is like, oh, they hate me. They don't want to sit around me. And then we might think, oh, but they maybe, had a short lunch today, or maybe they have to run to the bathroom, or, we can imagine all sorts of different scenarios. But some people can't, so it's good to try to pause and think of another scenario. Another might be that you are talking and then somebody interrupts you. I kind of find this ironic though, and kind of hypocritical, because she says, oh, people always interrupt each other often interrupt each other in conversations, when she just said in one of the first chapters that in general conversations are about not interrupting each other. But I guess that she means that it's something that can happen, and it's not the way to have the best conversation, but these are things that can happen. So these kinds of situations can come up, and the more you do socializing, the more of these situations will come up, the more rejection you might experience. And so there's always going to be that risk, and so you kind of have to take that risk in order to meet new people, and in order to have a social life, and in order to not be isolated. And then she talks about a relationship, and taking other people's perspectives. And here we come to the double empathy problem, which is that neurotypical people don't understand autistic people, and autistic people don't understand neurotypical people. Thing is, neurotypical people, because of our neurotypes, neurotypical people, unfortunately, or fortunately, they go really quickly to taking that a person's perspective. They kind of take the quick route in their brain, and therefore, unfortunately, it might also be wrong. So they might think quickly, this is the perspective that the other person's taking, and then be wrong about that. While autistic people will go the slower route of perspective shift, like putting themselves into the other person's shoes might take some time and some different cognitive way. And so it will go slower, and we might get it correctly that way. However, we might also have missed something and also do it incorrectly. So our system is not much better than the neurotypical one. Our system is just as good, let's just say. It just has, it is just slower, more, and more likely to be right, I guess, but it is, if it goes slowly, but it's also wrong quite a bit of the time. So I find that it is difficult to change this way of thinking, and I think that we shouldn't really strive for that. So I don't really like that she talks about having that she talks about this as a strategy to learn about perspective taking. I think that maybe some people need help with perspective taking, and taking the time to think about how the other person is thinking. However, I think that it's pretty much ingrained in your brain how that process is going to go. So I think that it's better to communicate more rather than trying to put yourself into the neurotypical person's shoes. So here we have an example with Eric and Lena. Eric is autistic, Lena is not. Lena is not good at communication, and she says that her back hurts. And Eric just says, oh, I'm sorry, that's sad. And then Lena gets really upset for some reason. And basically what Lena was saying is that she wanted to get a massage because Eric has before given her massages when her back hurt. And instead of asking Eric for a massage because her back hurts, she just says that her back hurts. And Eric is just like, oh, well, I'm sorry. And he thinks maybe that she just wants a validation that because it hurts, but actually she wanted something else. So she thinks that he doesn't care about her and she can't deal with this. So Lena should have been more clear. However, Eric could have gone the extra step to think, what does she want out of this, and read between the lines. However, we have different skills at reading between the lines. And should we really have to read between the lines when it comes to something that important? Apparently. So I don't think that we can really work on that, unfortunately. It's better to work on being clear. So maybe Eric could have asked, like, oh, I'm sorry, is there any way to help? That might be a way to get the conversation going. But you can't expect him to say that. But yeah. Then she talks about how, sometimes we can feel that the world is full of idiots because we're living in a world that is not made for us. She doesn't phrase it in that way, but that's what I'm feeling. She says that often we feel like how that healthcare professionals are all stupid and idiots, and that they're fighting against us instead of helping us. And I feel that sentiment in the autistic community. Now, I am a medical professional myself, so it's a little bit difficult here. It's kind of edgy, not edgy, but like thin ice territory. Because it is true that there are some people out there who are not good health professionals, and that you shouldn't be mistreated by the medical care system. However, medical professionals are human, and sometimes we might not understand what their thought process was, but they might have had a perfectly sound thought process when they were doing whatever it was that they were doing. So we might be having unrealistic expectations on that other person. That doesn't mean that we should get like trampled on and all that, but still. Also, it's important to be aware of what kind of expression that we're showing. Avoiding meltdowns. Now, if we have a meltdown, maybe it's good to seek help, or to, decide to isolate and go in our private corner. But if we can, we should try to not direct our anger or sadness at another person, because that can lead to the other person, if they're not ready and they're not patient, to also get irritated at us. So this is the truth and the reality of it. It's not great, I wish that we could live in a world where we could be open with our emotions, but sometimes we have to be aware of the fact that other people also have their own problems and are not perfect themselves. So that's just something to keep an eye on. Then she starts talking about appearances. She talks about appearances shouldn't be this important, but they are. And neurotypical people are really focused on appearances, most of them. Not all, but She said the most important is to have clean clothes and whole clothes, and it doesn't really matter about fashion. She does use Mark Zuckerberg as an example because of all of his gray shirts, his t-shirts. But I don't think he's a great example because he's a billionaire, and the only reason he's respected the way that he is because of his invention and that he's a billionaire, and not because of his looks. So he doesn't need to look handsome or good in order to, be liked by many people. But yeah, so she says that it's okay to be not interested in certain things. Certain autistic people are very interested in expressing themselves through their appearance, but this is for those of us who have a hard time with all these appearance things, like me. Another thing is buying clothes can be a difficult thing, so it's good to go and do this when there are less people around at the store. And sometimes you could ask somebody who works at the store to help you coordinate the clothes. I couldn't do that because I have social anxiety, so I wouldn't really want to, but okay. Then she talks about showering. I don't know why she has such a fixation on showering. She must have had a patient who was really smelly, I guess. But she says that you need to shower well with and also with deodorant and clean clothes. And sure, that's true. Because you won't be treated as well if you're smelling. I'm one of those people who has difficulty with hygiene, and I don't want extra shame around all this, but it is important. So let's just go further now. Then we have a final thoughts about why can't I just be left alone? Okay, that's kind of a thought that has popped in through my head, and I think a lot of autistic people's head. It is important to not isolate yourself, because what if something happens to you medically, for example, or something else happens, like you lose your home. These things are unfortunately a reality, and especially a reality for disabled people like autistic people. And we often have a very small social network already, and maybe we need more people around us in our lives. Another thing is also that it can help your being together with other people can help your health. You might have less high blood pressure and better mental health, less depression. This book was written before COVID-19, so it was written in 2018. So she talks about isolation, how isolation can lead to a loss of social skills. So it's good to keep these skills fresh by, meeting people here and there, being totally isolated for days, weeks, months on end is really detrimental to your skills, your social skills, and to your well-being. And we are social creatures, And then she says that if you cannot find anybody, there might be also social services that might help with this. Here she talks about a kontaktperson, which I don't know if they have that in another country, but it's a person who you can contact, that you can go on different activities with. I would say that you could also contact a church or just a group. I know that the library sometimes has book circles or just different kinds of activities. There are different ways to get contact with other people. It might not result in a friendship, but it can result in just having that social interaction. And a better social interaction than going to the grocery store, which is a nightmare for some of us. So yeah, that is all I had to say. I'm going to end it now. Next video will be about flexibility and change and organization and daily tasks. So have a great day, everybody. Bye.